Right. Hello, everybody. Hold on a second. I gotta try something here. All right, there we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Mikestand. Today is all right. I forgot about that part. Anyways, today is Friday, January the 23rd, 2020. Um, 2024 or 2026 rather. Sorry. Um, So on tonight's episode, of course, or on today's episode, well, okay. First off, let me get my head cleared up here. So, welcome to the Mikestand. Today is Friday, January 24th. Hope everybody's had a good week this week. Um, if you haven't already, if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I will try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. But with that being said, let's go ahead. We're going to give people a chance to come in before we get started. So let's see. We're coming up on 2 minutes here. We got quite a bit going on tonight, so I will probably mention all that in a moment here. Let's see. Oh, we got a third person, so I guess I can go ahead and start talking about what's on tap for tonight. Then, now that we do have a third person in here, so on tonight's episode of the Mikestand, we're gonna be going over to Me TV Tunes. I got 3 articles we're going to go over, including some lineup changes to the channel coming up in February here. They did this last year as well. We'll talk about some of the new additions they're adding to their their um, their channel. Some of the new additions they're adding to their channel in terms of some classic cartoons, both from more recent past and from more distant past. Um, let's see. Also, we'll be looking at a couple other little pieces, including let me see here. Let's see. Let's see. So here are all the new shows coming to Me TV Tunes in February. The Johnny Quest inspired a lifelong love cartoons for Tim Matheson. For those of you who don't remember, Tim Matheson, of course, was the voice of Johnny Quest back in the 60s there. And also, there was a time when Warner Brothers was ordered to put underpants on Daffy, on Daffy Duck. So, those are the 3 articles we're going to go over from Me TV Tunes. Also, of course, we'll be doing the wrestling wrap up. Be looking back to, of course, last night's TNA and Ring of Honor shows, as well as looking ahead night SmackDown, and also ahead to tomorrow night Saturday night's main event, as well as Collision. And we also have a little more news, a little bit more of an update on the Trey Miguel situation. There's some news there that we'll be kind of discussing. And of course, we'll wrap things up with this day in each history. So now we're coming up. Now we're coming up on 4.5 minutes. So why don't we go ahead and get started then? So let me go ahead and pull the articles up. We will go ahead and go over here and get right into them. So here's the first article we're going to go over tonight, and this was kind of a bit of a quickie here. And for those who do have Me TV Tunes on any of their systems, here are all the new shows coming to Me TV Tunes in February. 7 new shows for the new year. Article published on the 20th, which is this past Tuesday, I believe, by MeTV Toon staff. So you see right there, you got from left to right there, you got Mighty Mightor, Crypto the Superdog, and of course Space Ghost and Blip from the Space Ghost show. So new year means new tunes. Join the MeTV Tunes lineup alongside fan favorites like the Flintstones and Scooby Doo, and some new, much requested classic cartoons. Here are the new additions you can look forward to. Tasmania coming weekdays at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 3:30 Central, 1:30 Pacific, beginning February 2nd. Moby Dick and Mighty Mightor, part of that crop of original superhero cartoons from the 1960s that Hanna-Barbera did, were popular on Saturday mornings. They make their MeTV Tunes premiere on debut on February 7th at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 Central, 10 a.m. Pacific. Then you got the new Space Ghost and Herculoids show, Saturdays at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. Hold on here. 1:30 p.m. Eastern, 12:30 Central, 10:30 Pacific, on, of course, beginning February 7th. The Legion of Super, and here are a couple that are more recent. 2005, I believe, Legion of Superheroes. Saturdays at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 Central, 12 noon Pacific, starting February 7th. Crypto the Superdog, Saturdays at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, 2:30 Central, 12:30 Pacific, starting February 7th. Then starting Sunday, February 15th, at 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 Central, you have Speed Buggy. And then at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 3:30 Central, 1:30 Pacific, 1 Pacific for Speed Buggy, 1:30 Help, It's the Hair Bear Bunch. So those are the 7 shows being added to the MeTV Tunes lineup, and some of the things I like what I see, because I did actually take a quick peek at the upcoming schedule. They have a link to the full schedule there, which I did happen to take a look at, and I like some of the changes that they're making. So it's gonna be some fun stuff there, And now they're bringing in more of the older superhero cartoons. Maybe soon enough, where we got Mighty Mightor and Moby Dick and Space Ghost and Herculoids. We could theoretically get more of the super adventure stuff down the line. I'm hoping that they'll be able to add those at some point. Maybe they'll rotate them around like usual. So that's the first article then. That one didn't take too long. Guess I can go into a little more detail about each cartoon here. Tasmania, of course, came out in the early 90s, was part of the Fox Kids lineup, that starred Taz. And we saw Taz with, of course, his family and, going way down under. Come to Tasmania, come to Tasmania. Then, of course, as I said, Moby Dick and Mighty Mightor and the new Space Ghost and Herculoids, starting at 1 p.m. So right now, at least right now, what's happening here is, right as the schedule currently stands, from like 1 Eastern to 1 to 3 Eastern, 10 to noon Pacific, you got 2 hours of Super Friends, and then got Speed Racer on at 3 to 4, and then you got Tom and Jerry from like 4 Eastern, an hour Tom and Jerry on Saturdays right now. And what it looks like they're doing here is, I guess they're making more of a superhero block here from like 1 Eastern through to 4 Pacific on Saturdays. Where Super Friends going to get cut from 2 hours to 1 hour at 2. They're still going to be on from 2 to 3 Eastern, 11 to noon Pacific. So Tasmania is taking over the spot currently held by Scooby-Doo, but Scooby-Doo is moving back a half hour to going from 4 on weekdays here, going from 4:30 Eastern to 5 Eastern to Pacific. And then they're moving Yogi Bear. Well, Yogi Bear and Huckleberry Hound had a full hour at 3. So basically, Yogi Bear in part, Yogi Bear, Huckleberry Hound, the Jetsons and the Flintstones the Jetsons and the Flintstones were on at 5 Eastern. Right now we're on at 5 Eastern, 4 Central, 2 Pacific. They're getting moved. The Jetsons and Flintstones are getting moved to 6 Eastern and 6:30, 6 and 6:30 Eastern, respectively. While Yogi Bear and Huckleberry Hound shows are getting moved back to the 5:30 Eastern, 2:30 Pacific time slot. But instead of taking up a full hour, it looks like they're gonna rotate them back and forth, like they were doing with some other shows when they were first starting. Which I like that idea. I like more the idea of them rotating some of these shows in and out, basically. Kind of. Then starting, of course, Sunday, February 15th. Now, as of right now, of course, from 3 Eastern, from 3 to 5 Eastern, 12 to 2 Pacific, you got Mighty Mouse and Friends on MeTV Tunes on Sundays, whereas now Mighty Mouse and Friends getting cut back an hour, going from just 3 to 4 Eastern, and in that second hour, starting at 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 Central, 1 Pacific, starting February 15th, you got Speed Buggy, and then Help It's the Hairbell Munch coming up at 4:30 p.m. on Sundays Eastern, 3:30 Central, 1:30 Pacific. So quite a bit of stuff going on. Just they're able to start to bring in more cartoons, which as I said, I'm happy for. And the idea of rotating stuff in and out is pretty good too. So, anyways, let's get ready to move on to the next article here. Let's get into this next article now. This next little puff piece, as it were. Johnny Quest inspired a lifelong love of cartoons for Tim Matheson. How one voice actor made the switch from cartoon character to cartoon collector. Wow! That's interesting. Now, again, for those of you who may not remember or may not know, Tim Matheson was the original voice of Johnny Quest back when Johnny Quest started all the way back in 1965, starting, of course, opposite the likes of Mike Road and Don Messick. Don Messick, who played his father, Dr. Ben Quest, and Mike Road played Ray Spannon in that original cartoon. Anyways, this article was published January 22nd, which was yesterday, by MeTV Toon staff. And there you see Johnny and Haji right there. So let's get into this. You may know Tim Matheson as Eric Otter Stratton from National Lampoon's Animal House, or from his extensive television acting career on shows like Bonanza, The West Wing, Virgin River, and Heart of Dixie. But his acting career began on one of our favorite classic cartoons, Johnny Quest. Yeah, that's where I know him from. That's where I remember him from. Matheson was the original voice actor of Johnny Quest, voicing Johnny for all 26 episodes of the original series. In a recent interview with Rob Word of the A Word on Westerns YouTube series, Matheson recalled his audition in smaller parentheses here. In parentheses here, Joe Barbera wanted a voice that was not a big cartoon voice, but was kind of more reality based, and I got lucky, quote unquote. Having grown up watching Hanna-Barbera cartoons, the opportunity was exciting but intimidating. Matheson found himself a young teenage actor in a room full of voice acting powerhouses: Mel Blanc, Don Messick, John Stevenson, Daws Butler, and Mike Road. Yes, many of us know those names. Mel Blanc, we know his work with Warner Brothers, primarily, of course, as Bugs Bunny, among others. Don Messick, who would eventually voice Scooby Doo. John Stevenson's been around the block a bit. Daws Butler, of course, was Yogi Bear, and Mike Road, of course, aside from Ray Spannon. We'll also hear more of Mike Road as well in these upcoming cartoons, as he provided some of the voices on some of the superhero cartoons, including, of course, I think he was Xandor in the Herculoids, so, as well as being Meteor Man, I believe, in Birdman and the Galaxy Trio. In an interview with the San Antonio Express, Matheson recalled, quote, "It was a real special time in my life. I got to work with Mel Blanc and Don Messick and some of the great voice talents of that era. It's an amazing talent to be able to change characters and personalities the way they did," unquote. As we saw, Mel Blanc essentially being the voice of just about all the more well-known Looney Tunes characters for like something across, let's see, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, I think all the way up till his passing in 1989. So 6 decades there for Mel Blanc. After Johnny Quest, Matheson got to work with the great Mel Blanc on Sinbad Jr. and his Magic Belt for 81 episodes. Matheson voiced Sinbad Jr. alongside Blanc's Salty the Parrot. Sinbad Jr. and his Magic Belt, I believe, was probably not as well known or not as popular a cartoon, even though they did run for 81 episodes. So I think that was in syndication, though, which is probably why. Quote, "Mel could talk to himself, create different characters who would talk to each other back and forth in character," unquote, Matheson told the San Antonio Express. Quote, "I had a hard enough time with one voice, which was basically my own," unquote. Wow. Some of the stuff you find out, right? And again, friendly reminder to everybody, if you haven't already, you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people to engage. I'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. So that goes for both my Rumble and my YouTube viewers. With that, Let's see what else he has to say here. Matheson went on to star in other Hanna-Barbera cartoons, including voicing Samson in Young Samson and Goliath. I do know that was a Saturday morning cartoon, as well as Jace in Space Ghost. Beginning his voice acting career at 15, Matheson felt like he was growing up with Johnny Quest. And 15, and Johnny was probably maybe a little younger than that, probably maybe 13, 14. Could have been like 13, 14, but along with Haji. But he would go to the studio after school, complete his homework, and wait for his recording session to begin. While waiting, he took the opportunity to explore Hanna-Barbera offices. Quote, I'd wander around those offices, and there were the animators. They're drawing the cells, and then they'd throw them out. Unquote. Wow, that must have been quite a fun time. You're a voice actor getting to voice some of these characters, and you get to actually see how some of these drawings are coming out even before they show up on TV. That sounds pretty cool. As he moved on to movies and other live action roles, Matheson always felt a tinge of regret that he hadn't held on to any of the cells from Johnny Quest. Missing out on the Johnny Quest cells led to Matheson's new hobby, collecting animation cells. He first discovered 3 animation cells from Peter Pan at an estate sale. From there, his collection grew to include the original cells from Fantasia, Beauty and the Beast, Cinderella, Lady and the Tramp, Space Ghost, and several from Looney Tunes. Oh, that sounds like quite a collection, doesn't it? Discussing his collection with Journal of Antiques, Matheson said, quote, animation is a changing market, but for me, it's all about the beauty of the cell. These are classic bits of history. I never think of in terms of the money. It has to evoke in me an appreciation of the art, unquote. Wow, so he's more of a legit. He's not collecting for the money or to just as I know, Avi would get upset with some of the comic collectors who sat there and would just lock up the comics, not to read them, just to hold on to them, so they can gain value on them. Tim Athens obviously not one of those types. Years after the original Johnny Quest started, his appreciation for anime cells, Matheson was invited back to Hanna-Barbera Studios to voice additional characters in The Real Adventures of Johnny Quest. Now, that series came out, I believe, in the 90s. That was like the mid-96. Like Johnny Quest, I think, started in 65. And then I think The New Adventures of Johnny Quest was the sequel to the original Johnny Quest in 86. And now The Real Adventures of Johnny Quest was, I think, 1996. So, where Joe Barbera gave him a cell from the original series, as well as cells from the new series, all autographed by Hanna and Barbera. Wow, that was pretty cool. The long-awaited cell was of Johnny, Haji, and Bandit on a speedboat racing in the river along the island hook. So basically what we saw up top there. Watch Johnny Quest on MeTV Tunes Saturdays at 12:30 p.m. Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Central, 9:30 a.m. Pacific. So I think the cell that they're talking about is this cell right here. So that looks like pretty cool, doesn't it? All right. So, anyways, now getting ready to move on to the next article here, which will actually probably be the last article for the evening. So let's see, 25 minutes. So yeah. All right. So one time Warner Brothers was ordered to put underpants on Daffy Duck. Daffy's dance was just too much. Wow. Now, of course, as everybody knows, we know most cartoon characters, most of our favorites. I think even Boomerang had something called No Undies Monday, where most of the anthropomorphic characters we know from cartoons just never wore they never wore a pin. They'd wear something usually, but sometimes. But the article published today by MeTV didn't sound. So let's see. Wow, right there. So here we go. The Motion Picture Association of America, the MPAA, is the board responsible for letting audiences know what kinds of lascivious content they might view. The MPAA's film rating system ascribes a designation of G, general audience, PG, parental guidance, PG-13, parental guidance for basically, and only those 13 and older can watch, or R, restricted. So general audiences basically means anybody can watch. PG is parental guidance, which may mean that there might be some parental guidance that parents could decide for themselves if they want their kids to watch a particular movie or not. PG-13 means that basically it's parental guidance, but it's basically for audiences that are 13 and up. So PG-13 would be basically means that kids under the age of 13 it's not appropriate for. And then R is of course restricted. That's for basically mature material. To most theatrically released films, a similar rating system has been adopted for television as well. With mountains of streamable movies, there's no way parents can pre-screen everything before their children watch it. So in that way, the MPAA provides a service to the viewing public. Wide release movies have a rating that you know what to expect. However, many artists and filmmakers are critical of the MPAA, accusing the corporation of arbitrary censorship. Yeah, this is kind of the thing that kind of sometimes plays out in these situations. It's like trying to find that right balance to between making sure kids don't have access to age inappropriate material or for them, and still allowing for of course freedom of expression, freedom of speech. That's kind of been a debate in the entertainment realm for quite some time. So the MPAA is a modernized replacement for an even more outdated series of industry guidelines called the Hays Code. Now, the Hays Code is basically the Hays Code was basically the movie version of what the Comics Code Authority was for comics, right? It's kind of And I'm sorry, I need to step away from the computer for a moment. I'll be right back, but I'll put some music on. I'm gone, and then when I come back, all right, I'm back. Sorry about that. Anyways, I had to take care of a couple things there, but anyway, let's get back into this article here. Um, the code was implemented to censor works produced between 1934 and 1968. It was named after Will H. Hayes, president of the Nascent Motion Picture Producers and Distributors of America. In theory, the Hayes Code was meant to determine what was and what was not acceptable for the viewing public. The uptight and upright are placated, while the self-righteous can sleep better at night, knowing nothing morally ambiguous will be projected on the big screen. So obviously, this author is a little critical of it. I think some of the problem is that with what I think a lot of people found problematic with both the Hays Code for films and the College Code Authority for comics was that it was a little too broad at times. In other words, it didn't just seem like they were trying to puritanize children, but they were also trying to puritanize adults. So, anyways, is so he as we continue on with the article here, the Hays Code even dictated that the good guy had to win at the end, and we of course saw that play out in the Comics Code Authority as well, pretty much. Among the supposed hysteria that the Hays Code preempted was the potential outcry from a public confronted with a naked Daffy Duck. In 1943, Warner Brothers submitted "quote unquote" Wisecracking Duck to be approved for distribution. This was the only way for Warner Brothers to get their cartoons into theaters, where they'd play as part of a package before a single or double feature. So yes, and we've talked about this before. Usually back in those days, it was a package in which you had a cartoon, a newsreel, and a travelogue. The Leon Schlesinger directed tune was typical Madcap Looney Tunes fare, except for one quote unquote controversial inclusion. The Hays Board deemed a scene of Daffy dancing too lewd for public consumption. In Daffy's defense, he had little choice in the matter. In a last-ditch effort to avoid being roasted live, Daffy hits his assailant with a sultry dance, hoping to seduce and distract his axe-wielding predator. Wow, so wouldn't that be something, wouldn't you like to ask the Hays people, look, what would you rather have? Would you rather have the viewing public watch the axe wielder sit there and chop up Daffy in a very bloody and gruesome mess? I think that would even be considered more controversial than him kind of dancing sultry to get out of being cooked. Yeah. Not only did the Hays office modify the dance, censoring the cartoon to ready it for viewing, but they also ordered Warner Brothers to animate underpants on Daffy. It's a good thing they did too. Who knows what kind of morally bankrupt society would have grown in the aftermath of seeing a naked Daffy Duck. Yeah, I don't necessarily remember Daffy ever having well, all right, underpants what they meant. Okay, I see what they're saying. Watch Bugs Bunny and Friend on BTV Tunes weekdays at 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 Central, 6 a.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central, 5 p.m. Pacific. Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central, 5 Pacific, and Sundays at 12 noon Eastern, 11 Central, 9 Pacific, 9 a.m. Pacific. All right, so that's all we got for the let me just double check and make sure here, but I believe that's all the story. This last one ran a little longer than the others, but still. So some pretty good stuff there. We're already at the 40-minute mark. I really did make good use of the time here, getting it up to. All right, so now what we're going to do, of course, we're going to go ahead and we're going to move on to the wrestling wrap up. Look back to last night's TNA Impact as well as Ring of Honor. Look ahead to tonight's SmackDown, and look to tomorrow night's Saturday night's main event and Collision, AEW Collision. Oh, let me just. So first off, we're gonna talk a little bit about TNA Thursday Night Impact, the second week in a row, which apparently was better. The second week here which was also live, just like last week's episode. This one was received better than the premiere episode, apparently. Coming from the Tingley Coliseum in Albuquerque, New Mexico, with Tom Hannafan and Matthew Ringwald on AMC. The night opened up with Cedric Alexander defeating Moose in just like 9 minutes and 59 seconds. So just under 10 minutes. Then you had the follow up there of Indy Hartwell defeating M by Elegance. You had, of course, the rest of the Elegance brand of Ash, Heather, and Mr. Elegance, along with the personal concierge in their corner. But Indy Hartwell still defeated M by Elegance. There were some people who were talking about the possibility that Ash by Elegance might be turning face here. He seemed to show some face tendency. As well, it looked like that until looked like that, and then Lei Ying Lee and Zaya Brookside, the Angel Wars, of course, Lei Ying Lee, the current TNA Knockout World Champion, came out to defend Ash by Elegance, only for it to prove to be a swerve, as the Elegance brand all basically beat down the Angel Warriors in what was later reported that Ash might actually be coming back to the ring. Now, basically, we had all heard that she was retiring. She had apparently suffered a career-ending injury, and that's why she had to relinquish the Knockout World title last year. But apparently, that may not have been the case. Then we have the Feast or Fired match. Now, how this match works, you get a bunch of people in the ring. You have 4 briefcases hanging on top of each, of 4 poles at each corner. So the participants in the Feast or Fired match included Eddie Edwards, Eric Young, Steve Macklin, Trey Miguel, AJ Francis, Brian Myers, Mance Warner, Jason the Good Hands, or the Great Hands, Jason Hotch and John Schuyler, Rich Swann, Ryan Nemeth, and the Hometown Man. Now, the way Feast or Fired works, you have four suitcases hanging on four poles at all 4 corners, at each corner. You have one briefcase you have 3. You have one briefcase that has a pink slip, and you have the other 3 having title shots. In this case, the TNA World, TNA X Division, and International title. So the winners of the match were Eddie Edwards, Eric Young, Steve Macklin, and Trey Miguel. Getting all now. Now they're going to reveal. Next week will be the reveal of who won or who got which case. Even though some people have somewhat spoiled, there's some talk out there that at least one of the cases may have already been spoiled. It may be revealed. It's been revealed that Eddie Edwards may have gotten the briefcase that got the world heavyweight title, and we'll talk a little bit more about it as well. Of course, now with Trey Miguel, here's the thing with Trey. I said, and yes, I said that he was participating, that he was in this match. He was, and this is one of the things I was alluding to earlier. So, as we've been covering the Trey Miguel situation, back, towards the end of last year, earlier, few weeks ago, it was revealed that all four of the Rascals, Trey Miguel, along with, of course, Zachary Wentz, Myron Reed, and Desmond Xavier, had been signed to AEW. In fact, even though Myron Reed had already been promoted for a X Division title match against Leon Slater, it was basically, they had basically been signed to AEW, and then then a video package was made of the Rascals, showing up on, not this past Wednesday, but the week before on Dynamite, and then they made their on-screen debut last Saturday's Collision, minus Trey Miguel. It was then eventually reported that Trey Miguel had been released from his AEW contract, and as the story has come out, of course, it wasn't AEW that really wanted him released. The release came from Warner Brothers Discovery when it was discovered there was, I guess, a controversial social media post from back in like 2020. And you guys know I talked about this, I've talked about this over the last few days as we've been covering this. And Trey Miguel himself had even acknowledged this, that he was actually considering retiring from wrestling after all that happened. But then he was, I guess, I don't know how this came about, but Trey Miguel eventually re-signed with TNA and was actually kind of put into the Feast or Fired match. Now, hopefully this is not some bad joke on everybody and like Trey's going to get fired from TNA. But the belief is that when all's said and done, the belief is that or the predictions are, Eddie Edwards got the world title contract. Trey Miguel is going to actually get the X Division contract. Eric Young will likely get the international contract, and then the pink slip is actually going to go to Steve Macklin. As it's been one of the things that's been talked about. Apparently, Macklin's contract is coming up with AEW or with TNA right now, and they've been kind of miles apart, I guess, on the money or something like that. So this may be a way for them to, like, on screen fire him. Now, if it does turn out that Steve Macklin does leave TNA, there might be some some people are thinking he could end up in AEW, which could theoretically make sense because his wife, Deonna Purrazzo, is already in AEW, working in Ring of Honor. I mean, could you imagine that kind of scenario? You have Steve Macklin and Deonna Purrazzo, husband and wife, working together in Ring of Honor against Johnny TV and Taya Valkyrie. in some kind of rivalry. You know that, of course, Diona and Taya have previous history with each other, um, both as allies and as adversaries. So, anyways, now to the main event saw the last match of the evening wasn't necessarily the main event. Saw Jeff Hardy defeat Mustafa Ali. Jeff Hardy had, of course, Matt Hardy in his corner, while Mustafa Ali had the rest of Order 4 in their corner with, of course, the Great Hands, John Skyler and Jason Hotch, Special Agent Zero and Tasha Steeles. And then the main event of the evening, as they were saying, which was more of a segment, it was the system replacement segment, which Johnny JDC came out and announced who would be replacing him in the system, which and it turned out to be Bear Bronson. So Bear Bronson took over Johnny, and then what ended up happening is that JDC and Moose were betrayed by the system. The rest of the system attacked both. Well, after Eddie Edwards delivered a low blow to JDC, Moose was also attacked, as he was not apparently part of the problem. And then Cedric Alexander came out to supposedly maybe help Moose fight off the rest of the system, only to turn on Moose. And now the system has two new members, Bear Bronson and Cedric Alexander, much to not only JDC and Moose's surprise, but also apparently Alicia Edwards. She was also not in on what they were planning on doing. As she was kind of shocked as well. So now that's all we got for the TNA TNA portion of the wrestling wrap up. So now let's move on to Ring of Honor here. As last night's Ring of Honor show, it sounds like, oh boy, I know we're too far back there. On last night's Ring of Honor on Honor Club, coming from the Esports Stadium Arlington in Arlington, Texas, with Caprice Coleman and Ian Riccaboni on commentary from Ring of Honor Wrestling.com. Opening match saw a tag team match in which Tommy Billington and Adam Priest defeated the Premier Athletes duo of Arya Davari and Tony Nese in 9 minutes 26 seconds. Of course, Premier Athletes had Mark Sterling and Story Denali in their corner. A 2-on-1 handicap match, Satnam Singh defeated Dante Leon and Josiah Jean. Then you had the Crew of Action Andretti and Leo Rush defeat the recently signed duo to AEW of Jordan Oliver and Alec Price. Don Castle and the Outrunners, Turbo Floyd and Truth Magnum, defeated in a 6-man tag, defeated the team of Ozzy, Hit, and Gino Medina. In a pure title proving ground match, Lee Moriarty survived the challenge of Matt Menard in 8 minutes 21 seconds. In women's tag team action, the Minions in Training, MITs of Diamante and Billy Starks, defeated the team of London Dior and Rachel Ellering. In more tag team action, Big Bill and Brian Keith defeated Will Alday and Kevin and KM. And in the main event, saw Ace Austin defeat Johnny TV in the main event of the Ring of Honor show. So now we've looked back to last night's. They talked quite a bit about the situation with Trey Miguel. So now we're going to move on to looking ahead to tonight's SmackDown, as it'll be the go home SmackDown before tomorrow night's Saturday night's main event here. So tonight's SmackDown, which comes from Montreal, Quebec, Canada, isn't they? All right. So tonight's SmackDown, which is live from the Bell Center in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, on the USA Network. So the opening match is slated to be Johnny Gargano with Candice LeRae in his corner, taking on one half of Fraxium of taking on Nathan Frazier with Axiom in his corner. Damian Priest is set to take on Trick Williams, as these two are, of course, will be involved in the in a match tomorrow night. In a number one contenders triple threat match for a shot at the WWE Women's Tag Team titles, former champions Alexa Bliss and Charlotte Flair will be taking on the team of women's U.S. champion Julia and Kiana James and Nia Jax and Lash Legend. So, and then in a match for the WWE Tag Team titles, the Wyatt Six duo of Joe Gacy and Dexter Lumis, with the rest of Wyatt Six in their corner, will take on a pair of the MFTs. We don't know which members will be involved yet, but that'll be happening on tonight. And then coming up tomorrow night on Saturday night's main event, on Peacock, also coming from the Bell Center. The matches that are signed include, in a match for the WWE Women's Tag Team titles, the current champions Rhea Ripley and Io Sky will take on the Judgment Day of Liv Morgan, the Judgment Day duo of Liv Morgan and Roxanne Perez. Of course, they just coming off of a win in a similar triple threat match that happened on Raw. Then in a fatal four-way for the number one contendership for the undisputed W title, and basically trying to earn a shot at Drew McIntyre, what some people might believe is either coming up at Royal Rumble or even at Elimination Chamber next month. Tomorrow night, Saturday night's main event, we'll have a four-way between Randy Orton, Sami Zayn, Damian Priest, and Trick Williams. And then also signed for tomorrow night's Saturday night's main event, we'll see Cody Rhodes look to get a little bit of revenge on Jacob Fatu for basically costing him the undisputed world title. So let's see, that's all we got for the WWE news on that. Now to look at what's going down on tomorrow night's Collision. On tomorrow night's Collision, coming from the Addition Financial Arena in Orlando, Florida. Originally, this was going to be a live show back in Texas, but due to the weather situation, they decided to tape the show instead. So the matches set up for this show include Kathy in a continuation of the feud between the Ops and Adam Page and Jet Speed. Adam Page is set to take on Katsuyori Shibata. The non-title match, AEW Women's World Champion Chris Statlander is set to take on Isla Dawn. The newly crowned number one contenders to the AEW World Tag Titles, Mark Davis and Jake Doyle, are set to take on recent AEW signees Jordan Oliver and Alec Price. Don Callis family's duo of Proto Sheeta, the Proto Star Kyle Fletcher, and the Alpha Konosuke Takeshita, will be taking on the father and son duo of Austin and Billy Gunn. Willow Nightingale is set to defend the TBS title against Julia Hart. Andrade El Idolo will be taking on Magnus. And the main event will have Claudio Castagnoli of the Death Riders defending the CML World Heavyweight title against Roderick Strong. Of course, Wheeler Yuta will be in the corner of Claudio Castagnoli, and Orange Cassidy will be in the corner of Roderick Strong. So now let's move on. We're going to start wrapping this up. We're just going to move on to this, with today being, of course, Friday, January 23rd, 2026. Let's go ahead and take a look back at this day in Nietzsche history. History! So, 2001 and 2016. All right. So first off, we're going to head back 25 years ago. As on this date, 25 years ago today, back in 2001. Let's date back in 2001. On this date back in 2001, IFC Productions' Waking Life premiered in movie theaters on this date back in 2001, 25 years. Waking Life is a 2001 American adult animated surrealist drama film written and directed by Richard Linklater. The film explores a wide range of philosophical issues, including the nature of reality, dreams, and lucid dreams, consciousness, the meaning of life, free will, and existentialism. A series of philosophical discussions at the film's core are processed by a young man who wanders through a succession of dreamlike realities wherein he encounters a series of characters playing themselves. So basically, on this 25 years ago today, IFC Productions' Waking Life premiered in theaters on this date back in 2001. So with that being said, now moving on to next piece in Nietzsche history, as we move ahead to the year 2006. On this date in the year 2006, on the Go Home Raw Go Home show before that year's Royal Rumble, coming from the Charlotte Bobcats Arena in Charlotte, North Carolina, WWE held its Monday Night Raw event on that date. It was a go home show before that weekend's pay-per-view. The main event saw Ric Flair team with John Cena to defeat Edge and Chris Masters in a second chance four-way match for qualification in the Royal Rumble. The Big Show defeated Lance Cade, Rob Conway, Gregory Helms, and so Big Show defeated Lance Cade, Rob Conway, and Gregory Helms in a Royal Rumble qualifying second chance four-way match. Jonathan Coachman defeated Jerry Lawler in just under 2 minutes. Trish Stratus and Ashley Massaro defeated Victoria and Candice Michelle, 2 minutes 30 seconds, and then Kane defeated Carlito by DQ. open up the show. That was back in 2001. Now moving ahead to the year 2016. 2016 will be our next stop here. So pull that up. On this date, 10 years ago, in the year 2016, A1 Pictures, Persona 3, the movie number 4, Winner of Rebirth, premiered in Japanese theaters on this date back in 2016. So 10 years ago today, the fourth installment of the Persona 3 movies, Winner of Rebirth, premiered in Japanese theaters on this date back in 2016, 10 years ago. And finally, we move ahead to the year 2019. So that was just 7 years ago. On this date in 2019, 7 years ago today, the 15th and final issue of Regression from Image Comics went on sale on this date back in 2019. It sold for $3.99. It was 28 pages. All right. So with that being said, I thank everybody for being here tonight. Hope everybody enjoyed the show. We'll be back Sunday. We'll be back this Sunday, as we'll be continuing our trip down Comics History Lane. My co-host will be Apex from Apex Comics. We'll be looking at comics that went on sale in July of 1940 from Quality Comics. We'll be introducing everybody to The Ray. I'll be one of the features in there, among others. Got up to like 5 possible features of that. So with that, I thank everybody for being here, and I hope to see everybody back here on Sunday. Bye.